Welcome to a special episode of So Much Crime.
So Little Time. I'm Dee.
And I'm Jeff. And today we have a very special interview we want to bring you. But first, a little bit about it. So from June 19th to June 29th, if you're anywhere near San Francisco in the Bay Area, you can go see an elevated staged reading and critical celebration of the Laramie Project's 25th anniversary at Theatre Rhinoceros.
We just discussed the Matthew Shepard story and how it's changed over the years. Now we're delighted to share this interview with the two directors of this production at Theatre Rhinoceros.
Theatre Rhinoceros was founded in 1977 and is the longest running LGBTQ plus theatre in the nation.
You might remember that we discussed this theatre when we covered The Doodler.
Our guests today are River Bermudez Sanders, who previously directed Bad Hombres at Theatre Rhinoceros, amongst many other productions, and Elio Amador, who directed The River Bride at the Chanticleers Theatre.
Please enjoy this special bonus interview, and if you can, go check out the Laramie Project at the theatre. There's a link in our show notes. Hello, River and Elio. Thanks for joining us. As we're chatting, there's still a few weeks before the June 19th, that first performance. So how are things going so far?
We're having a great time. It's been a very quick process. We have a group of 6 actors that we assembled very quickly. And it's been a very collaborative process. It's been very kind of, both Elio and I have never co-directed before, and we didn't know each other before we jumped into this project, but it's been really, really fun to kind of like learn each other's styles, learn how we work together, learn how we're complementary. We have a couple times found moments where we've just like said the same thing at the same time, or like Elio will say something and I'll be like, I was just about to say that, or vice versa. So I'm having a great time.
That's wild. So that feels like that's a big jump to like go into that partnership together, because like if it doesn't work, if you clash, it can be kind of awkward. At what point, how much did you know of each other before you said yes to it? Or did two people just say, hey, there's this other person, do you want to work with them?
I will say that I will thank Crystal Liu of Theatre Rhinoceros for choosing this team. Part of the reason I said yes is because she's the person that came to me about this. And I'm like, I trust your vision. So yeah.
That's great.
Okay, so it's a third party that brought you both together. I love that. That's amazing.
Can I ask a logistical question, just because I'm just curious how this works? How do you divide up the responsibilities between the two of you?
Oh, that's a great question. Elio, I'm gonna take a shot at it, and then if there's more, please let me know. Like, what we've been doing is we have just kind of been feeding off of each other. It's been pretty natural. It hasn't, like this play is divided up into moments instead of scenes. And what we've really been doing is just kind of going from the top. I'll throw out an idea. I'll work with the actors. I'll get to a point where I'm like, I'm not sure. Elio, what do you think? And then Elio will take it for a while, and then vice versa. Yeah, like there are certain movement sequences that I have a vision for. There are certain movement sequences that Elio has a vision for. I'm just like, take it away. I'll block a scene and then Elio will make adjustments. Elio will block a scene and then I'll make adjustments. I think that's pretty much how we've been working, Elio.
Yeah, basically that. I heard someone talk about the difference between like balance versus harmony. And that's what it makes me think of, like, rather than like, here, River, you get 50% of the time and Elio gets 50% of the time. It's more like you said, kind of a ebb and flow, and like each according to their strengths. So that's what I try to work with. Yeah.
That sounds great.
I love that. Okay, if we jump into the Matthew Shepard story itself, I'm kind of intrigued to know how much awareness both of you had about Matthew Shepard and his story before working on this play. Just to give a bit of context, obviously you can hear from my accent. Although someone actually, side note, told me recently that my Irish accent was gone, and I was really, really disappointed. I was like, are you telling me I sound American? Nothing against the Americans, but I'm like, I've only been here 4 years. Like, I can't go home if I have no Irish accent. They will not accept me. Sorry, that's a complete sidebar. But anyway, So I didn't really know anything at all about Matthew Shepard until earlier this year, or maybe late last year. Jeff and I covered a podcast called The Coldest Case in Laramie, and they just happened to mention Matthew Shepard or Project Laramie.
Well, they mentioned the case in that it's the only thing that most people know about Laramie.
And Jeff was trying to fill me in about it. So that was my first introduction to this. So I went into this podcast. I'm going to the production in a few weeks' time, kind of blind to it. I don't have a huge amount of context. So I'd love to know how much context both of you had before jumping into this.
Well, I was very young when it happened, about 5 years old. So it wasn't a big moment in my 5-year-old life. And growing up, kind of from a conservative religious upbringing, I didn't really hear about it. And then I came out and I probably scrolled past it, and so my big understanding came from joining this project, really.
Yeah, I also I was born a couple months before the incident happened. So I really had no awareness of it because I was a tiny baby. But I learned about it through the play, actually. The Laramie Project is really often produced in high schools in as an educational piece. And it was one of the first times that I had seen queer people represented in a theater piece, which, as a young queer person is quite harrowing, kind of learning, gaining understanding of your positionality in the world through that lens, through the story of trauma. It was quite jarring, and it was quite a formative experience. And then since then, that was part of what really drew me to the show when Crystal contacted me, because it's become this huge seminal piece of queer theater. And when I was growing up, it was kind of the only thing that I had been exposed to, the only representation of queer people. And now I feel like there's a wider variety of shows about queer people and about different types of queer people, not just cis white gay men. But it was, yeah, that's kind of what I came in with, was just this understanding of this play as a piece of queer history and a piece of queer theater history.
Interesting. What one of the things, so we listened to a podcast called "You're Wrong About" that discussed the story a little bit, but it mostly focused on this 2020 report that came out a few years later, and a book too that came out that was sort of suggesting that this was less of a hate crime and more of a drug related crime. Although that journalism, as the "You're Wrong About" episode talked about, has really been kind of criticized and questioned. I'm curious, kind of what you make of that sort of other narrative that sort of developed in the aughts. Maybe how does it affect the play?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a big question. Elio, do you have thoughts?
When we were in early production meeting mode, before rehearsal started, our production manager Crystal sent us an article that was kind of about that new narrative that had popped up. And I just thought, I didn't know yet about how much the journalism had been critiqued and everything, but I thought whether this is true or not, all these new details, it just adds a lot of nuance to it. And it speaks to more than it speaks to the case. I think it speaks more about society, about how we have to have things in black and white, and how a lot of people can't handle all the shades of gray and the nuance. They want a perfect victim, and in order to say this person should have rights or should not have been murdered or something. And I think it's something that humanity has to grapple with. That a lot of marginalized people are pushed to the fringes of society, and they might do things that you might not approve of, but that doesn't make them any less worthy.
Yeah, I think that kind of relates back to one of the big things that I took from, or maybe the most pivotal things mentioned in the podcast itself, was this whole he was no angel. and how like that narrative really got pushed as if there was any excuse for it. Like, who can stand over every day of their life and say, you know, oh yeah, I made great decisions that day. And as you said, how does that change my right to be safe and my right not to be persecuted and my right not to be brutally murdered? I was kind of wondering, like, kind of related to that, like the podcast itself kind of challenged, as Jeff said, like some of that narrative that came out. But as you were deciding how to approach your telling of the Laramie Project, and you were deciding how to approach Matthew Shepard's story, were there any components that you were consciously trying to highlight, and any components or any, like, was there any strategy to like how you were trying to make sure there was certain parts that were front and center to the audience? And can you tell us a bit more about any of that?
One of the first thing that comes to mind when you, because there's you know, there's a lot of things, we've had a lot of conversation about it, and this is a, you know, this piece is feels very close to Elio and I. We've had a, you know, like now after several weeks of talking about it, like it does feel very personal. One of the first thing that came up was we've chosen not to have, you know, there are several times where Aaron McKinney, Russell Henderson, and then Matt Shepard himself speak in the show. And we've made the choice to never have those people ever like live in one actor's body. By which we mean,
oh, interesting.
So meaning that like those lines are split up. You know, anytime that Russell Henderson or Aaron McKinney or Matthew Shepard speaks, there's not a person, like it's kind of ambient. You know, it's like we have people are saying the words, but it's like this actor and then this actor, this actor takes a sentence, this actor takes a sentence. The point being to indicate that we are all Matthew Shepard and we are all also Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson. Like we are all responsible for creating a world in which this doesn't happen again. And we're all both perpetrator and victim in this situation, you know, in this world.
That's kind of like a very powerful way to showcase the grayness that we were speaking about. You know, because there is no one person like perpetrator, like, and victim. It's all the grayness. Everyone is involved. Everyone is everyone else. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, you know, like it's been difficult because, you know, this is a story that is very, very specifically about Matthew Shepard, but it has had so many lives since that. Since the incident, you know, it's become the Laramie, you know, the incident became the Laramie Project. That was then translated into a movie. That was then. It's been performed all over the country for many, many years. And we had a conversation with Crystal about like, you know, this show is about Matthew Shepard, but it's also really not. And even when I say that, I'm like, oh, how could it not be? Oh my goodness, how could you say that? But I think it's important that it's both. You know, that yes, this is a very specific show about Matthew Shepard, but it's also so much about, you know, a through line that we noticed through the script is so many people trying to distance themselves, trying to like position neutrality as kind of absolution. It's like, oh, I don't care if you're gay or not. That's not, so therefore it doesn't matter. Therefore I'm not complicit in this because I don't care. And it's like, no, that's the point. Like the fact that you don't care is the point.
I want to ask something sort of on these same lines that we've been talking about. So Dee often likes to point out that I'm much older, and I'm far and away, I think, the oldest person in this conversation, which so be it. But I was in college when this happened, and so I remember this. And one thing that probably, and I was very much sort of in my own sheltered bubble, not maybe paying a lot of attention to the outside world. But the thing that I remember most vividly were the protests, the Westboro Baptist Church. That was the first I think I can remember hearing about them and kind of their tactics and their actions. And if anything, that was the thing that stood out to me of just like how appalling and degrading and offensive some of the things that they were saying were. My question is, we're in an environment now in this country where I feel like some of that kind of hate speech, that kind of open bigotry is increasingly normalized, increasingly tolerated. There's certainly more and more, it seems, acts of violence. And I'm curious how you feel. To me, it seems that this really highlights the relevance of this production now, of the work that this theater does now. But I'm curious how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think in approaching this script again, kind of like River was saying, that it's had so many lives. And one of the one of the things you ask when you do a production is why this show, why now? And part of the relevance of the show is that so many of the victim blaming lines have been used about so many different marginalized groups recently, whether that's Black people being victimized by the police, or whether by trans women of color being victims of transphobic violence. That was something that we wanted to keep in mind about like how that's relevant now with all the bigotry going on. And that's part of the reason like we wanted more than just the demographic of Laramie on stage. We wanted to show like young queer people of color, majority. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back as well to River, what you were saying about creating everyone is by not caring, everyone is having an impact. You're involved by not caring. It's kind of like that bystander effect. And as you were saying that, I was thinking of the same thing, Elio. I was thinking like that feels like it is pivotal to so many things that are happening at the moment that feel like people are just like, welp, I didn't do it, so whatever, and that they can just kind of remove themselves from all of the shite that is happening all over the world. So it really does feel like that message is, I don't know, it can just transcend so many things. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
To your point about the so there's a moment in the show that surrounds the Westboro Baptist Church, and there's a person named Romaine Patterson who led a protest when the Westboro Baptist Church showed up at, I don't remember if it was Matt's service or like at some when the Westboro Baptist Church showed up to protest Matt, where she has people wear these giant white angel wings to literally block the Westboro Baptist Church from like seeing the service, like literally putting themselves physically between the Westboro Baptist Church and Matthew Shepard. And it reminded me of, when a bunch of Congress people wore pink in Congress, it's like, it's the like where it's like, okay, it's the same, like you're wearing something, but it's not actually doing anything. It's not actually like, it doesn't make any physical difference. Whereas this is a protest where like you're wearing something, but it is making an actual tangible difference. There's a physical effect here. It's the same thing of like, I'm going to wear a garment that's symbolic, but it also has a practical effect, and I'm like, you need actions like that, where it's like, you can wear your pink blazer. That's great, I guess. Sure. But like, it doesn't actually, you're not actually putting your body between the victim and the perpetrator. Like, you are not actually like, there's nothing tangible there.
Yeah, you can't do it and do nothing else. Like, that can't just be your check the box activity. I've done something, I've supported. Like, there has to be something else with it.
Yeah. This production is described as an elevated staged reading. And I'm curious, as someone, I don't know, what does that mean exactly? What does that entail?
That is a great question. So essentially it means it is a fully staged production, but the actors all have their script in their hands. A lot of I'm going to try not to go too wide with it, but the state of theater is really scary right now, especially in the Bay Area. We've had funding cut, NEA grants slashed, and it's been hard to get butts in seats. And it's been hard to get folks, there's not a lot of theater in the Bay Area has to be very scrappy. And we are working with actors who also have day jobs, who also like have to support themselves in other ways. And often the biggest hurdle in a community theater production is people getting off book. It is hard. It's really hard. So basically what we've done is just kind of, because we're kind of producing this show on a time crunch, we've just eliminated that hurdle so that we can focus on all of the other elements. So we can focus on telling the story. So we can focus on like getting a really interesting immersive tech experience. Theatre Rhinoceros is in this old converted gallery in the Castro. It's a really unique space, a very intimate space. And I think that with the tech capabilities that they've been able to put in the space, you're able to have a really unique, really intimate experience. So we want to focus more on that than like oh, did you say this word correctly? We're just eliminating that hurdle
Mm-hmm.
for everybody. And the actors that we're working with are incredible. I've had experiences before with kind of like, quote unquote elevated stage readings where you don't even really notice that the actors have the script in their hands. Like you're so immersed in the storytelling and the actors are so embodied that like you're just like, oh, right, they had scripts in their hands. Um, and it just eliminates, so much stress from the
Yeah, that
process,
makes sense.
you know.
That I mean, the
Makes a
little
lot of
experience I have
sense.
with theater, that's the most terrifying
Yeah.
part to me is remembering your lines.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
One other thing I wanted to ask about this production is so I've never seen Laramie Project before, but I'm curious for people who maybe have or maybe they've seen the movie, is there anything that you would say? I feel like you've already touched on some things that are kind of unique about this production. What would maybe your message be to someone who maybe saw this a long time ago or has been involved in production before? Like what kind of makes this unique
Mm.
or kind of stand out?
I think that part of what makes this production unique is that it's helmed by the two of us who were not really around for when this event happened. We weren't touched in the same way. So it really is this kind of inheriting of this story and all of the terror and the horror and the beauty that is in it. We do bring in some elements that we honor other folks, other victims of queerphobic violence in the story. Yeah, I would say come in with an open mind, with a blank slate. I don't think that it'll be like another, like simply because of the space and the way that we're telling the story. It's not going to be like any other production of the Laramie
Yeah.
Project that you've seen. And I think because it has the two of us at the helm with kind of a very, I don't, are we both Gen Z? I don't know, like Gen
I'm
Z, like,
millennial.
elder Gen Z, younger millennial, like lens. It's going to be approached from the lens of two people who were not
Yeah.
there, who did not experience it viscerally.
Elliot,
Yeah.
is there anything you would add to that?
I think River touched on it. The space is very unique. It's a very small space, and it's not just a proscenium where the actors are on one side and the audience is on the other, and there's this big fourth wall that separates you. You're kind of in it, like yeah. It's just you're right there, and we're also like trying to approach this from a more like gender inclusive space. I mean, I'm trans, and, and I'm sure River has their own specific identity that I'm not going to assume right now. um, but yeah, and it's just like I know it's technically a docudrama, but since we are so removed, we want to make sure that you're feeling the emotions that are relevant to today and not just reliving a past, like not just a straight documentary, but something visceral that you can take home with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. I want to actually, so sort of related, I want to zoom out and ask you both about your kind of first experience or your background with Theatre Rhinoceros. And 'cause have you both done productions there before?
Not as a director, but yes.
Can you just maybe share a little bit how, because I feel like this is a special theater, like this is a unique theater. It has a long history. Can you maybe speak to your own experience first working in the theater?
Yeah, let me see, what did I start doing originally? I might have started as an understudy. Yeah, so I was just kind of a fly on the wall throughout the process. I didn't need to step in at any point. So I was just able to observe a lot, and that was really interesting. And then I was a house manager, and one thing I will say is that like the Theater Rhino, like they make sure that like anyone who has ever worked with them feels invited to like their new projects and like keeps that connection, or at least that's what I've gathered. So yeah, I invited Crystal to see The River Bride, and she said that she enjoyed like seeing my directorial vision. And I would consider myself more of an emerging director, and so like I'm grateful that she trusted me with this, and that I also got to have River involved too.
That's awesome. River, what about you? What was your kind of first experience with this theater?
Yeah, I'm gonna uplift the other companies and artists that led me to the Rhino, because I was directing a staged reading of local playwright Justin Lopez's work, The Re-Education of Fernando Morales. I was directing that at the Town Hall Theater, which is up in Lafayette, and then Justin recommended me to direct Bad Hombres at Theatre Rhino, and which starred Rudy Guerrero. It was a one-man show, with him playing like 12 different roles or something like that. It was this gargantuan feat. And Rudy just won a local theater award for his performance in Cabaret at the Rhino. He's this amazing actor, and like Justin recommended me for this project. It's like it was my first time directing in San Francisco,
Was that your exact
and
response?
that's exactly what I said. Yes.
Was that like a text or a voice note or what?
Voicemail, yeah. Just,
Amazing.
but I was just totally daunted by it. And yeah, I hadn't directed in the city yet, but we went through that whole process, and I learned a ton, and I felt so supported by Rudy and so supported by John and Crystal at the Rhino. And I was just thrilled when they asked me back. And especially, and they, I'm also working at San Francisco Playhouse at the moment. I'm understudying for one of their shows, and understudying can be a little bit difficult because you never know when you're going to go on. Like you could be totally occupied for that whole time, or you could be just kind of like hanging around. And I was so grateful to Crystal when she came to me with this proposal, because she knew that I was understudying, and she was like, hey, we're going to make this work. Like, we're going to it's going to be co-directed, we're going to work around your schedule, like whatever you need. It was like a perfect opportunity that just kind of slotted perfectly into my schedule. Yeah, lots of gratitude for Town Hall, Justin, Rudy, Crystal, for kind of like making all of this work.
Yeah. I also forgot to mention that I acted in All's Well That Ends Well at Theatre Rhinoceros, directed by John Fisher. And that just reminded me of what I feel like the Rhino does, which is like clearing old texts and also like showcasing bold new texts, which I think is like a really great mixture to have right now.
I can't wait to go. I'm so
Yeah,
excited.
I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm so excited to have you.
Yeah. So exciting to be able to see this especially after speaking to you both. Do you have any future projects you're working on or thinking about that you'd like to talk to us about?
Ooh, working on or thinking about. Working on, yes. Thinking about, yes. Ooh. Let me see. What is coming up for me? I want to uplift one production that I'm going to be part of, the Rocky Horror Show at Oasis, in San Francisco. I've been part of it for 2 years now. I'm in the ensemble, and it is the...
I have a confession to make.
Oh my goodness.
I have never once seen this before. And anyone I say this to is like, how? And I'm like, I just haven't. I remember people going when I was in high school, and I just never ended up going. And I've never seen it before.
Oh my God.
So.
Well, this is a wonderful opportunity, because I have to say, like, this is the coolest production of Rocky you will ever see. It is fully immersive. It takes place in a club, in the Oasis Club in the Mission in Soma in San Francisco. It's been running, I think this year is going to be its 10th year. Don't quote me on that.
Oh, wow.
Sorry. Starring Darcy Drollinger, the inaugural drag laureate of San Francisco. It is so cool. It is one of the coolest, strangest things that I've ever been a part of. That's coming up in October. And then...
So do you say you've been part of the ensemble for 2 years, did you say?
Yes.
Oh,
And you said fully immersive,
That's
so that
cool.
means, the movie is like audience participation. This is a live show, so is this more audience participation than the movie?
I would say yes, more audience participation than the movie. Like, because you're essentially in a crowded club. So like I'm in my like sexy short shorts and like a mesh shirt, just kind of like kind of like slinking around people. Like I get like up on people. Like you're like shoulder to shoulder with the audience as you're doing this show. It is so cool. Not for the faint of heart, but I also think that it really represents a great model of theater, because like I also have a confession to make. I have a really hard time sitting through theater sometimes. Like I get really fidgety. I like, like if it's a 2.5 hour show, like I get super like my hips start hurting and I get, just fidgety. And this is a really cool opportunity to kind of like you get to be on your feet, you get to move around, you can go get a drink at the bar, like you can take a break and go to the bathroom, and like it's not, like it's not gonna like ruin your night.
Oh my
Over
goodness.
people.
I feel like, Jeff, I feel like there is a girls' night out with your wife and the other group being organized in my head right now. That's what I feel like is happening.
I think you should go. I think you should definitely go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds amazing.
So that'll
I'm Googling it right now. That's so cool.
that'll be in October of this year. Then after that, it's my second year doing the Panto and the Presidio.
I went to see it last
Oh
year.
my god! Then you may have seen me. Oh my goodness! Yeah.
Peter Pan.
Yes, Peter Pan. Yes.
Oh, I remember when you went to that. You told me about it.
Yeah, and I brought some American friends. And they were like, "What is the Panto?" And now they want to bring all their friends because they loved it so much. Because this is such an Irish thing.
Well, yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's yeah, and like we're bringing it to America. It's a very like San Francisco based thing. Like it's kind of, I would call it. It's a lot of the same people who did Beach Blanket Babylon, which was like a long running San Francisco performance art tradition. That was kind of like a mixture of like an SNL plus drag plus. So I would call this like a spiritual successor to that. But it's like some of the most amazing, talented artists in the Bay. Come check us out. It's a lot of fun. Bring your kids. Family friendly.
My kids loved it. Yeah, it's so fun. The Panto is like it's an institution in Ireland.
Yeah.
Like everyone goes to the Panto in Ireland.
Yeah,
I don't know. I didn't get an invite. I don't know where that was, but
It's like me and Megan brought the kids. It was so fun.
I have kids.
And Presidio is so cute as well. I love it there.
Oh yeah, come check us out.
Elio, are there any future projects that you are planning to work on or are thinking about working on that you would like to tell us about?
Cool. I'm not sure if I'm like allowed to release one project that I'm signed on to right now, but
That's exciting.
it's I'm not saying it's like Hollywood or anything, but theater for the very young, which is something that I've done like some theater for young audiences shows before, and that's always really rewarding. But yeah, and I like to get involved with the community partnerships at Alternative Theater Ensemble, where I'm an ensemble member. And yeah, I'm about to do event where we just play theater games with the community at Berkeley Public Library, West Branch. And so yeah, we have a lot of fun there.
Oh, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing. If there's one thing that both of you would say would be like, I would love to, like dream thing to work on. Is there a dream thing in mind?
I would like to produce the musical Gypsy at Oasis in that immersive form and in a very kind of like campy drag inspired campy drag inspired immersive, completely irreverent way. Gypsy is kind of like it's kind of a Shakespeare of Broadway history, and I think it's time to just completely deconstruct it and do it in a way that is completely immersive and completely ridiculous, because that show is completely ridiculous.
I love
like
that.
The characters are drawn so broadly and yet so like I think it is a musical that will hold up even when completely queered and when completely deconstructed. Like, I don't know, and I think that Oasis is a place to do it. So I'm putting that out there in the universe.
Yeah, put that out there. Love that.
Since we're putting things out there, now there are like I have a couple of full length plays on the back burner that I've started and have not had the time or resources to finish. And I'd really love to do those. I mean,
Plays that you've written yourself.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I've had like a few one acts produced virtually slash in person. But yeah, sitting down, finishing a full length, and getting to see it done would be really great. The like style behind those is kind of like She-Ra Steven universe, but for like queer and trans adults.
I love that.
Yeah, that sounds
Oh my
great.
goodness. I can't
Yeah.
wait. I can't wait for all of this that has been put into the ether to come true. Very exciting stuff.
I feel like we've gone through our list. Was there anything that we didn't ask about that we should have?
Support local arts organizations, support local theater.
Yes.
We're hurting
Yeah.
right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're really, I'm not ashamed to say it, we're really hurting right now.
We need funds. They don't come out of nowhere, and like artists deserve to be compensated for their work and to be able to make a
Absolutely.
living out of art if they so choose.
I think that is, that's a really important and good note to end on. And I think, one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you both was we wanted to get the word out there about this production, let people know
Mhm.
about this. But I think it's also a good point of if you're not in the Bay Area and you're listening to this, to go support your local theater wherever you are. And actually,
Mm-hmm.
as much as we love people listening to our podcast, go out in the world and support the arts out in the real world. That is very, very important.
And if you can't sit in a seat because your hips are hurting, find some immersive arts near you where you can, shake it with a drink in your hand while you're supporting. It's all there.
Thank you both for taking this time. Thank you for answering all of our questions. And we're very excited to come see the production in very soon.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
I want to echo what you said when we were chatting with them. After talking to them, I am even more excited to go see this production very soon. So, as a reminder, if you'd like to catch the production of the Laramie Project at Theatre Rhinoceros, check out the link in our show notes. It's running from June 19th to June 29th. We'll also post about it on our social media. So definitely go check that out.
Thank you as always for joining. Leave us some ratings on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, patreon.com/so much crime, so little time. Thank you and goodbye.
So Much Crime, So Little Time is a production of Mind Glove Media. The executive producer is Paxton Caloriso. Our associate producer is Blythe Ty. Our theme music was composed by Vyacheslav Starostin. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to this show on your podcast app. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a review. Even better, tell your friends. To join the discussion, look for us on social media. Check out the show notes for all the links. Thanks for listening.